Next, our next storyteller told me backstage, right? He said, you won't believe this, I just saw a 50-year-old picture of myself hanging on the wall. And I was wearing this shirt. A shirt, not that shirt. He said he was wearing this shirt and he just threw the shirt away. Like this summer. So this is a man who clearly is in it for the long haul, right? He doesn't do anything lightly. Sam Berman was a local folk singer from the late 1940s. He helped to form a folk group called the People's Artists of Boston, which was very active in supporting local progressive candidates and causes. He was in the Air Force in WW2 and attended the University of Wisconsin, after which he returned to Boston and ran a local trucking company until he retired in 1986. He's going to give us a history of the song, which many of us here know a bit about. He'll give you the real skinny on it. Would you please welcome Sam Berman?
Public services and politics are intertwined, and music and politics often mingle as well. This was the case of the origin of the song, the MTA song. Many people believe the MTA song was an amusing song, but originally it was a political protest song. It was meant to be amusing in order to draw people's attention to its message. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about my role in the history of that song. Before the increase, in 1949, Walter A. O'Brien, a labor leader and chairman of the Progressive Party of Massachusetts, ran for mayor of Boston as a Progressive Party candidate. His platform was largely focused on injustices and barriers that impacted poor and working class families. One of his primary issues was the recent increase in fares on the MTA, a 50% increase for many riders. Many people, especially the poor, were angry about the sudden increase. The fares were increased in an unusual way. Before the increase, it cost 10 cents to get on the subway system. But now, if you transferred to a streetcar or a bus, you had to pay an additional nickel when you got off. Walter seized on it as a campaign issue. One of his popular slogans was "No fare increase." Walter campaigned by driving around in a sound truck and stopping in local neighborhoods to speak to anyone who would listen. Walter wanted songs to help gather a crowd, and that is where I came into the story. In 1947, I had left the University of Wisconsin and returned to Boston to help run a family trucking company. Having an interest in jazz and American folk music, I saw a notice somewhere that there was a class in how to play the guitar, and I wanted to play the guitar, so I signed up for the class, and I met the teacher, who was Bess Smollax Hawes. Bess had been a member of the Almanac Singers, along with Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie in New York City. I formed a group of folk singers, and we were doing some weekend gigs around Boston, and sometimes had a square dance caller, and we played and ran some square dances. Bess, my guitar teacher, asked us to help write campaign songs for Wally, and we met at her house and agreed to try some songs. Arnold, my brother, and I had been joking that if you didn't have a nickel, you stayed on the bus and it took you back into the subway system. And you're trapped in the system forever. And Jackie Snyder, who was sometimes my sister-in-law, agreed to try to write a song based on that joke. And when we met again, she had written the basis of the song, and instead of Charlie, she had used the name Angus. And we thought that Angus suggested Scotch thriftiness. So as a group, we changed the name to Charlie. We made some other changes and rewrote some of the verses. Charlie was not intended to be foolish. He was meant to represent the common man caught in a system that was rigged against him. It was a protest song. The song was first recorded at A Studios in Boston in 1949. I sang the verses, and the rest of the group joined the chorus. We sometimes went with the sound truck and sang this and some other songs live in order to draw a crowd before Wally's speech. At the election, Wally came in last. Our singing and square dance group continued using the song at hootenannies and at intermissions and performances at square dances. Eventually, one of our fans sang the song in New York to Will Holt, and he was a well-known folk singer there. And Will liked the song well enough to record it in 1957. 8 years after we had first written the song, he sang the song with the original words that ended with "Vote for Walter A. O'Brien to fight the fare increase. Get poor Charlie off the MTA." Holt's recording of the song began to get a lot of attention. Life magazine was going to do a story on the song, but suddenly, because of the political hysteria Senator McCarthy had created, no one would play the record on the radio, and Life pulled the story. Some people in Boston claimed the song was glorifying the communists because it mentioned Walter O'Brien, who was actually no more a communist than Henry Wallace was. Soon, however, the Kingston Trio heard the song from our fan who now owned a bar in San Francisco. They liked it and decided to record it, but because of the history and the McCarthy hysteria, they changed the name to George O'Brien as a fictitious name. They also cut out a verse and changed the words to make it less local and more controversial. The Kingston Trio version was released in 1959 and quickly started topping the Billboard's charts. Life magazine, who had abandoned Will Holt, ran a cover story on the Kingston Trio in 1959. Since that time, the song has become a part of American folklore and has been reprinted in many folk books and became a staple around campfires. The song, Charlie on the MTA, became so much a part of the Boston lore that in 2006, when the MTA discontinued the use of metal tokens and began using an electronic card, it was decided to call that card the Charlie card. And so every time you get on the MBTA and you have living evidence in your hands that the folk process is alive and well in America.